conversation. High avoiding concentration. You just stare in admiration, babe.
Well, thanks again for being here. Most of you know Boom Charlotte, boomcharlotte.org. We normally have a pretty huge festival in April. This year we had to postpone, so we kind of pivoted to online programming. And we always also wanted to have some kind of program which centers and kind of deepens the conversation and understanding of art, which, there's not too many venues for that. So that's kind of the purpose behind the forum. And also, we also want to create a space where everyone will feel like, they can speak openly, critically, but respectfully about art. And it's you who make it that. So please, thanks again for being here. Please come back next month. A few thank yous, first of all, to our wonderful team, Cameron, Kia, Jessica, and who've been working so hard to make this all happen. We have an amazing team of what we call the core group of artists. There are too many to list, so I'm not going to do that. Thanks a lot to our long-term supporters, Knight Foundation, Real Prize Fund, Art and Science Council, NC Arts Council, WDAV, Blumenthal Performing Arts, Plaza Midwood Merchants. We really miss our neighborhood, Plaza Midwood. Hopefully we'll be back there soon. We don't have any particular support for this series because, however, it's because of their kind of sustaining support that we can still keep the lights on, if you will. So there's also a hint that we really welcome contributions. So if you go to boomcharlotte.org, you'll find out how to contribute. All right, so we'll jump right in. Cameron, I hope I didn't miss anything. If there's any housekeeping stuff. So just to repeat, we really love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your questions. So contribute via chat, and we'll try to make sure that we address those as much as we can. So let's get to our guest this week, Jessica Moss. Here you see the photo of the Queen of Charlotte. Behind her is Sophie Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, I guess. So Jessica, as you know, well, most of you know, is a very prominent member of the Charlotte arts community. She's been working locally and nationally on so many different things. So I'm not going to read out her resume because that might take an hour. So I encourage all of you to visit her website listed here. I first met Jessica years ago when she was still the creative director at the Gantt Center. And she's been involved in Boom Charlotte ever since. So she has put on this amazingly innovative visual art showcases. And it's all the more impressive because, as you know, our area of Boom Festival, Plaza Midwood, does not have a gallery, but she always found innovative ways to create a great showcase. She'll be talking a little bit more about that. I guess that's all, I'm sure we'll get to know Jessica way more, her work, her philosophies, what's on her mind these days. So over to you, Jessica.
Hey, y'all. It's so nice to see all of you in my living room. I'm Jessica, as Manoj said. It's really great to be in community with you all today. I just want to say thank you to the Boom team for organizing this. Thank you to Autumn Leafy Rainwater for being our soundtrack as we got things started today. Thanks to Cameron Neely for being our visual placeholders, so you all had something to look at while you were waiting to join us for today's event. And thanks, Manoj, for inviting me. It's so awesome to be able to do what we would normally do with each other and have a conversation on the phone, but in front of people. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Cameron and Kia, y'all are lit. Thanks for putting this together. And thanks all of you guys for showing up. So yeah, I want to start today off with a quote that has been in my frontal lobe for some time. It's a quote by Angela Davis, and it says, "You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time." I'll let you marinate on that. I've been a member of the Boom team, as Manoj mentioned, since the early days of 2017. I'm committed to using Boom as a platform for local and emergent visual artists to disseminate their work, to sell their work, and to not have any restrictions, commissions, or barriers in doing so. My history with Boom has started with what I called the Hue and Shade Lounge, which was a pop-up gallery at the International House. I hosted the Queen's Cusp, which was a visual community vision board that I presented in partnership with the Harvey B. Gantt Center, where I was previously, as Manoj mentioned, the creative director. Another exhibition in 2018 was La Raza Cosmica, which activated multiple storefronts as a neighborhood gallery crawl. In 2019, there was the Boom Box Show, where I was really excited about bridging local and international artists with small businesses throughout the Plaza Midwood community. And even this year, I hosted the Beyond Visual Art Exhibition, which was embedded into our COVID-19 proof Boom in Your Living Room activity. Manoj and I go way back, and I'm always grateful for his camaraderie and his friendship. I think he invited me here to speak with you all today for a number of reasons, but because of my early history as a part of the Boom curatorial team, but also because of a very specific concept that I shared in 2019 when the Charlotte Creative Mornings team gave me a platform to speak with my dad. I just want to pause here and shout out Matt Onlin and Tim Miner, who are behind so many amazing projects in our local Charlotte creative landscape. If you don't already, you should take a moment and subscribe to The Biscuit, which tells stories of Charlotte creatives in your inbox 3 days a week. If you have personal projects of your own, you should also consider applying for a Hug Micro Grant. They are awesome, and they are behind so many projects, so shout out Tim and Matt. At this Creative Mornings event, there were over 100 people who showed up at this brewery at 8 o'clock in the morning when they weren't serving beer to hear my dad and I talk about water and building community and this concept of servant leadership. Whenever I speak to students or give lectures about the work, there's always this inevitable question about how and why I went from art school to law school, and we can talk more about that later. But I always use this as a point to encourage them to trust their path, to lean into their fears, don't question their failures, but rather just accept them as a part of the process. Based on my definition, we're all artists, all of us, everybody in this room and beyond, because we're always working on something, and we're all always works in progress. And just like in moments of battle, everyone's role is important to achieving the goal. Those who are in the front line are necessary, the medics are necessary, the flight operators, so on and so on. Everyone has a role. I believe a true artist constantly educates herself and is aware of the changes happening in their particular area of work. He or she should always walk on the path of self-development and keep up with the changing times. True artists are learners for life, and they believe in growth and are always focused on improving their craft. I consider myself an artist because it's all encompassing of my practice, and I feel like there's so much freedom in that word. Yes, I do have a painting degree, and sure, I paint sometimes. But I learned early that the work that I'm committed to goes well beyond the four corners of the canvas. Like the Roll Up Charlotte, as Manoj mentioned, which is an embedded artist residency project that supports Black contemporary artists with the time, space, and money to sustain their creative community engagement practice. Or the Above Ground Railroad Scholarship that I started in partnership with Elsewhere Museum in 2018 that annually supports the professional development of one Black female high school student from the Triad who's committed to pursuing an administrative career in the arts. Or like the upcoming exhibition that I'm currently planning with North Carolina Arts Collective, God City, who's been creating culture in Charlotte for well over a decade. From the curatorial work to my work in academia, to the visual art practice, to the real estate or placemaking work, to my legal scholarship, all of it is about adding more tools to your tool belt, which ultimately leads to a very specific set of skills that you can utilize for furthering your own mission or vision. Now, I just always want to be clear what my agenda is. My mission is to support Black people and Black artists. I am here to create space, to provide opportunities for further creative development, to get artists paid, and to disrupt systems that prohibit any of these things. My work is deeply rooted in this philosophy of servant leadership. Servant leadership for me is, number one, about valuing everyone's contribution. Number two, regularly seeking the opinion of others, asking for the input of stakeholders, cultivating a culture of trust, giving up individual power and deputizing others to lead, helping with life choices and issues, not just work issues, and making choices that benefit tomorrow. I'm happy to further engage in that if y'all need, but I feel like those are 7 solid pillars that I really base all of my work and my projects on. Whether it's a global pandemic or difficulty just trying to manage the daily task of the weekday, I think we all know that challenges are imminent. I keep hearing this question, right? It's like over and over again, when will things resume to a moment of normalcy? But for many of us being artists, Black people, people of color, there has never been a normal. We've always functioned in a system of oppression. There's always been a threat on our livelihood. And because we have learned to adapt, we're resilient. And we often thrive in these moments. We adapt in order to learn to survive, say, enslavement, colonization, racism, patriarchy, the realities of poverty, pandemics, genocide, etc., right? Like the list goes on. And what I see now are organizations and institutions continuously relying on these broken, dysfunctional systems and models. They're leaning on existing structures and paradigms that we know don't and won't work for us. And now more than ever, we see these cracks in the foundation. So when asked, what is the role of artists in moments like these? I believe it's simple. Continue to do the work. Let's use this time to examine and interrogate these cracks. Let's honor the foundation that others have and are continuing to build upon. And while we're reimagining alternative futures, let's create a space that allows everyone to play their very specific and very important role in this new society that we're envisioning. This work is the responsibility of all of us. So in moments like these, I channel my ancestors, leaders who came before me, and specifically the Black woman superheroes who are always doing this work, despite what paradigms or systems aren't working for us. There are many people, of course, around the world who are actively doing this work, who are doing their part to build and envision the world that we need. And whether they define their practice as servant leadership or not, their values are still aligned. So Manoj asked me to share a few artists who aren't new to moving through oppressive structures. But actually, I'm gonna throw in a last minute audible, and I really wanna use this time to highlight some of the Black women arts workers who, if not for them, our entire artistic ecosystem becomes endangered. Of course, this list is infinite, And I'm sure that you all can add your own list of Black women superheroes. But I want to focus on just a handful who are committed to building a more inclusive and accessible world that makes space for all of us. So I want to start with Dina Hagag. She's the president and CEO of United States Artists, which is a national arts funding organization based in Chicago. She's part of a team who recently organized a $10 million artist relief fund that specifically supports artists who are currently unemployed and facing financial hardships due to COVID-19 with individual $5,000 grants. Karen is on my team right now, and she's going to be putting links to all of these opportunities in the chat. So if you're interested, please follow through. Lisa Hoffman, who's the executive director of the Alliance of Artist Communities, which is an international network of artist residency programs. Lisa is a systems thinker and coalition builder whose work examines equitable engagement. Many of us from Charlotte know Lisa because she previously served on the McCall Center for Art and Innovations team. During this crazy time, she and her team at AAC have continued to list job postings, residency openings. They've established a number of different affinity groups and developed an arts preparedness and response resource list for residency programs affected by COVID-19. Lakeisha Leak, who is on the call today with us, hey Lakeisha, is the founder and director of the Eloise Arts Foundation, which supports the growth of early career Chicago-based artists and arts workers of color by providing professional and financial resources. I think there are still 5 days to apply for the cost of living fund, which puts 15 one-time $150 micro grants in the hands of Chicago-based artists of color and art workers to help cover the basic necessities, regardless of the stage in their career. Celeste Smith, who's the program officer for arts and culture at the Pittsburgh Foundation, works closely with Shonda McDeal, who's also on the call today, hey girl, of the Haines Endowment. And the three of us work really closely on a number of brand initiatives in Pittsburgh, PA. Celeste is an integral part of the Pittsburgh-based One Hood team. One Hood is a collective of socially conscious artists and activists who utilize art as a means of raising awareness about social justice matters, which affect people around the world. I think it was on April 21st, One Hood distributed over 2,000 KN95 masks at no cost to essential workers throughout Allegheny County. And this was just a part of the countywide campaign to help protect frontline workers as they perform essential duties during the COVID-19 pandemic. The homie Alicia Wormsley is an interdisciplinary artist and cultural producer. Her work is about collective memory and the synchronicity of time, specifically through the stories of women of color. I've been working with Alicia on the Sybil's Shrine project, which just launched 2 weeks ago. Sybil's Shrine is a new artist residency program for Black women, trans women, and femmes who are mothers that identify as artists, creatives, and or activists, with opportunities for skill sharing, self-care, creative spaces, financial support, all in an effort to further develop their craft and presence in the art world. Sybil's Shrine is still accepting Black creative mothers in the Pittsburgh region to become a part of their collective. So thank you, Cameron, for sharing that link as well. Recently, there was a LA Times article discussing how canceled residencies, the loss of artist income, canceled programming and exhibitions ultimately leads to an endangered artistic ecosystem. But like the Black Panther Party of the 60s, who on their own accord fed communities, had free breakfast programs, organized free medical clinics, built schools, created other mutual aid initiatives for Black people like WIC. If we want to see it, then we have to be the ones to build it ourselves. I started this talk with that quote from Angela Davis, but I want to say it again. You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time. Thanks, you guys. that was interesting.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, that is wonderful, as always. After talking to Jessica, my brain gets so over full for the next few days, so, which is wonderful. So, by the way, just a note that he has been posting about links to most of the, if not all of the artists that Jessica mentioned. So if you scroll through the chat, you can find more information about them. And and just as Jessica said at the beginning, I'm sorry I forgot to credit the artist and musician we had at the beginning. So that's something we hope to continue. We'll feature a Charlotte artist and a Charlotte musician every time. So this time the artist is Carmen Neely, who I think is with us. So thank you, Carmen. And the musician is Autumn Rainwater, who I don't know if she's with us, but so this particular the artist and the soundtracks were chosen by Jessica. All right. Sorry, I'm getting questions through my phone too. So it's interesting you talked about like these seemingly new things are what's now become a big deal in the arts world. To use that catch-all term, social practice, but that's the kind of work Black people and the artists have been doing continuously, all the time, because we need that. Because and it's the same with one of the terms Charlotte seems to have discovered in the last couple of years is social capital. It's become such a buzzword these days. So which again is a lot of the communities on the fringes who could not rely on the existing infrastructure, or for whom that didn't work, always had to rely on their social connections, especially Black community, immigrant communities, and all that. So anyway, it's just a very insightful point. So to segue from the Angela Davis quote, can I ask you, what are the books you're reading currently, or you really feel like people should be looking into?
Yes. Manoj and I were joking earlier, this is a cooking show and I'm Julia Childs and I'm going to pull the dish already out. So I have the books set up here, oh, I didn't know he was going to ask me about what I was reading. And tangentially, but I think it's pretty funny. I've done this to Manoj before, where I've called him out and asked him to speak without knowing in advance that I was going to do that.
Yeah, I was in the audience at half asleep, so you really put me on the spot.
So thanks for letting me be prepared with this first question. There are a number of books that I'm reading right now, and I pulled some aside that I thought would be interesting for this conversation. Let's see, let's start with this one. Alan Karsh wrote this book. This is the only grant writing book, and so many of my projects require this specific skill set. And so this text, if you don't have it or if you haven't read it, is incredibly valuable, and I recommend that you check it out. The only grant writing book. There's been a number of editions, but this is the most recent edition. So check this out if you have time. Let's see. I am really into studying this intersection of art and law. And I think, I alluded to this earlier, but there are more similarities than I think people really give credit to. Both require a constant defense of the choices that you've made. If you're making a painting, right, in a formal critique, you have to justify why you use this specific palette, why you made that stroke. why is always like this looming question, right? And the same with the legal practice. It's just constantly about defending the moves that you've made. And so in my academic career, I found out that I didn't make this thing up, that there are so many other people who are interested in this intersection. And so this text, which is Art and Law in Post-60s America, Models of Integrity by Joan Key, is so illuminating because it speaks of a number of cases, some that have even gotten to the high court, that specifically speak about the intersection of fine art and the law. And stemming from this is this text, which I've read over and over again, We Are Not Saved by Derek Bell, which I highly recommend if you haven't before read this text. It was written in the 80s, but it is still so relevant today. And Derek Bell, who was a legal scholar and professor, attorney, really hones into in a creative narrative many of the issues and challenges that are incredibly important for us today. So that's helpful. How about some visual art books? I love KJM. Harry James Marshall is like my fave. And my mentor of over 10 years, her name is Ayanna Moore. Ayanna, when I was an undergrad, changed my life when she gave me this book by KJM. And I stole it from her. I stole it from her and I kept it in my studio for years.
She's not watching, right?
She's probably watching. She knows. And then one day, honestly, 10 years later, she texted me and was like, hey, do you still have that KJM book? I need that back. And I was like, oh man. And she like wrote her name in it and stuff. Like I really wasn't supposed to steal it. But I still had it. And so I gave it back to her. And so of course I had to get my own. And so there are many great moments in this book. Harry James Marshall is amazing. One of the things that, I mean, sure, right, people know him because he sold that painting to Diddy for $21 million, and that's cool. But he had a whole career before then, right? And one of the things that I always appreciated about his art, his craft, and specifically just about his style is the use of black paint, like literally out of the tube black. All through undergrad, when I studied painting at Carnegie Mellon, there's always this idea that you don't use black. You use ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to make a black. And whatever, I don't know. This is like some lesson of the old masters. And
interesting. Huh.
For whatever reason, yeah, Ayanna Moore is an artist you should all know about. Thank you, Lakeisha. For whatever reason, that's something that's taught in academia, and I never quite understood why. And Harry James just throws all that out like completely. Look, I just opened up anyone's page.
Wow. Yeah.
The characters are like this is the blackest black.
Black on black painting.
Yeah. He's made a series of paintings that are literally black on black, and the figures are beautiful and they're also rich. I'm just opening up random pages, but Harry James is my favorite. Yeah, look at this. Aren't they beautiful? And there's more. I have another one of his books. It's this one. Look at this on the back. Brilliant. Yeah. Look at Harry James Marshall. He's my fave. This is his beautiful wife, Cheryl. The first time I met Harry James, it was at the Arts Bank in Chicago, which is a site for contemporary art in Greater Grand Crossing. And I geeked when I saw him. He's like a demigod. I saw him and I was like fangirl, and he was with his wife and she was like, baby girl, calm down. She's like, he's a person.
Might be used to that.
True. He's a person, and he's so accessible and really honest. And I really appreciate looking at the work and knowing him as a person and having opportunities to engage with him.
So Jessica,
I could keep going.
Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Were you?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I have 3 more books, but
We'll come because we already started getting some great questions. But I just wanted to go back to the uh, to the topic itself. So the one question I get a lot is do you miss designing? You miss being an architect, and even though I still think of myself as that and still do a little bit of that. So, but my answer usually is that this is my art. What I'm doing in the community is the art. So, and I feel like you're also somebody who has kind of made that shift. But whereas I think most people think of art as that commodified object, so that thing you create. So, just wanted to, if you can speak briefly about your path. I mean, maybe your work with Theaster Gates, or what led you to opening the roll-up, the artist residency, which I think is one of the most unique and interesting art projects in the recent years in Charlotte.
I appreciate that you consider the roll-up an artwork.
Yeah.
I think of it like that too. It's an experiment, like any kind of art project,
Right.
where I don't know. I've created an outline and I have a plan, but I don't know how it went. And I'm grateful for the folks who have been willing to go on this adventure with me. I went to grad school at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I got my master's in arts administration, policy, and management. And during that time, I really didn't even know what I was doing. I was just really interested in this process of real estate and engaging with artists. I bought my first piece of property in 2007 here in Pittsburgh at this community called the Hill District, where so many greats have come from: August Wilson, Romeo Bearden, Teenie Harris. And I bought this land because it was more economical for me to pay a mortgage than it was for me to pay to live on campus. And it was in terrible condition and had been vacant for quite some time. But I had a bunch of my friends and homies from the art school come and help me rehab this space. And it ended up becoming this creative community hub in a way that I hadn't anticipated. So many of you have heard this before. It started off with us just like watching HGTV and drinking wine and being like, oh, we can tile a floor. So confident. And like now these floors are like ephemera of the terrible ideas that this was at the time, but they still exist. This is the art, right? And ultimately that became, the seed that was used to help me buy my second piece of property in the same community, and then later a third. And so now, still to this day, I own and manage 3 properties in the Hill District that function as affordable housing for students and artists in the area. Affordable housing as in we will take your Section 8 or rents start as low as $200, etc. It is literally as accessible as possible. Many of our tenants identify as people of color or trans, like there's no discrimination. And this is worth mentioning because it's not a norm, even though it should be. And I really think that work during my time in undergrad was the seed that was planted on my head when I moved to Chicago and working with Theaster. There's a great TED Talk about Theaster Gates, if you're not familiar with who he is. He'll hate it if I say it, but many people consider him the father of social practice. And as Manoj alluded to earlier, he hates it and rejects this term because social practice is what Black people have been doing since the beginning of time, and he's not wrong. But if you go to Chicago, you're bound to know this person, or at least run into him. And his work is really about the intersection of real estate, urban planning, community arts, and fine art, all in one space. I started working with Theaster on the Black Artist Retreat, which is an annual event that used to happen in Chicago, but this year happened in New York, that brings together artists and curators, makers like across the gamut together in one place once a year, and really encourages community. But really his work is, he bought the Stony Island Arts Bank, the space that I worked for $1 from the mayor, Rahm Emanuel, and now it functions as this site of contemporary art in the South Side, in a place where, I don't know, I used to give tours to like the director of the Tate Modern and like homegirl who lived down the street at the same time, right? Because the work was so inaccessible. Many folks who were from the community had never made it to one of the most renowned collections at the Art Institute of Chicago, right? So the whole idea is, how can I bring it to them instead of always asking them to come to us, right? So yeah, it was like, maybe like, yeah, just kind of hanging in the frontal lobe for some time. I didn't know what I was doing though, but when I started working for Theaster, it was like, oh, this makes sense. And this is a thing. And I'm so still grateful for the experience that I had working with him and working at Rebuild, because it illuminated a path that I was slowly building to, that I wasn't really aware of. And forever grateful for him. Continues to be a mentor, and so much of those practices really instilled the work of the roll-up for what it is today.
So kind of to shift the focus or shift the perspective. So you are somebody who is, I would think, as comfortable in a museum, like in a curatorial role, or part of an institution, as well as out in the community. Whereas, as you're saying, a lot of Black people, immigrants, a lot of minorities, a lot of them don't feel like they were belonged or were welcome in some of those, this really exclusive art spaces. So now that, like a lot of the work you talked about don't happen within museums, they are out in the community. They're so inseparable from the places where we live and, exist. So what do you feel like, so the other side of, the role of the artist changing in a very fundamental way, what do you feel like is the role of museums going forward, when artists themselves are kind of turning against the idea that, first of all, art as that commodified object, which you have to, go into an exclusive, often private space to experience?
The role of the museum. Let's set them on fire. Set them on fire, all of them. Burn it down. Let's start from the beginning. Really, I think that this is a moment where so many systems are broken that this is our time to rethink everything. Museums are historically inaccessible. They are historically inclusive. Or exclusive, excuse me. I think that there are ways now in this moment, if COVID has done anything, this is creating space and time for us to rethink so many of the paradigms and the systems, as I was saying earlier, that we've just become so accustomed to. And I think museums are one of those things. Of course, there are, some outliers, and there are structures, organizations, institutions who really, kind of dissect this idea. I mean, arguably the roll-up is a museum, right? Like, we've got a collection in this space that highlights a number of different artists. We are open to the public to engage directly with this collection. Brianna Daniels, who's on this call, is our administrative manager and often leads people through tours, talks to them about specific art, hosts programs in the space. That's a museum. And so I think we really have to use this time to rethink so many of the norms that we just came to accept before, and be open to making a lot of these changes, and be open to really revising the way that we've seen or functioned previously.
Yeah, I've been thinking that it's like a forest fire that's happening now. It'll be interesting to see what remains, what gets burned away, what sprouts back up soon. So, as you know, you and I could talk for hours, but we are getting some wonderful questions. So let me change to, we'll shift to that, and then, then you and I can come back to our conversation. So we have a question from Luke Heinert, big supporter of.
Hey, Lou.
And, without whom Boom wouldn't be what it is now. So, so
for the roll up. That's really worth mentioning. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know you haven't actually.
Yeah, no.
But Lou is a major supporter of the roll up and a number of projects that we do. And so I'm really grateful that you're here today, Lou. Thank you.
And the question is very much related to that. So she's asking, how can a city like Charlotte empower Jessica, well, outside of increased funding, of course, which is always an issue.
Yeah, it's always about more money.
But beyond money, we also make, you and I, we all of us make things happen in spite of having no funds.
I think it's showing up. It's always showing up. It is showing up. It is making sure that you acknowledge that the work is being done. We have to see each other. We always have to see each other. And I think it's important, we hosted Black Blooded in the city. 400 people came to the opening night of the exhibition. That's crazy, because what that does is then it sets a precedent for a number of different institutions around the city who maybe didn't want to have a predominantly Black exhibition in their space. When people show up for things like this, the precedent is set, and then there's an acknowledgement of it. That support goes honestly so much further than any coin, because then the onus is on a number of different organizations to do the same work. And so I think showing up is really key. I think another example is providing opportunities for providing platforms, providing opportunities for other folks who are doing similar work. I acknowledge my privilege. I acknowledge the opportunities that were given and gifted to me by so many people who are on this call, who are in my life, etc. And without them, I would not be able to do what I do or be who I am. And so I think if there are other people who you see who are doing similar work, you should listen to them. Ask them directly what they need. I think everyone's circumstance is incredibly different. And so to just make a blanket assumption that, oh, you need this is also incredibly problematic. Ask what people need specifically and listen and try to make an effort to do those things. But really showing up. Right. I think that's key.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what your experience is. What really kept me in Charlotte is that people do show up. I wish the funding structure, the people in power were more considerate and started seeing us, which still hasn't happened. But people in the arts community seem to show up and really support and be there. So. Yeah,
we see that with Boom, right?
Yeah,
Boom
I know.
Grows more and more every year.
Insanely fast. We are so overwhelmed by the response. So we have a question from Trey McGriff. Hey, Trey, another person who's been contributing so much to the cultural scene here, founder of the Cine Odyssey Film Festival, among other things. So he's asking, Jessica, what do you see as the real disconnect with artists who choose not to use their influence and platform to uplift their community?
What do I think of artists who choose not to use their platform to uplift community? That's cool. Yeah. Each your own. Right. If you like it, I love it. If that's what you want to do, then that's cool. This is the way I do it. I think that's, again, had I not been given the opportunities that I've been given, I wouldn't be able to do the work. And so I feel like so much of it is that, right? Right. If I hadn't gotten the support, if folks if there wasn't a B. Noel in Charlotte, there could be no Jessica Moss, right? B. Noel created one of the first galleries in Uptown Charlotte that created an opportunity for Black artists to show their work in this landscape where that was so foreign and unheard of. And B, was doing this in the early aughts, the 90s, right? Like this was a time when that was just unheard of. And I see B, I acknowledge B, I understand, I honor her, that had there been no her, that I couldn't do the work that I do. And so I really think that, to answer your question, Trey, if that's what y'all want to do, then that's cute and that's fine. But this is just, it's incredibly important for me to honor the community and make space for people who otherwise don't have space. It's literally at every table in which I sit, how many more seats can I make available for my community? Right? Like how open the door and all y'all come in, right? Like everybody just come take a seat, find your space here. That's what I really want to feel like.
Yeah, I know, and that's the interesting thing too, you know, I mean, I feel like what's happening now is that broadening of the definition of what it means to be an artist, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the art that happened before suddenly is no longer valid or relevant. So, you know, I would be the last person to say that everyone needs to, you know, contribute or address the community stuff through their art. I think there's space and need for everything.
Like the homies with God City, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
There's this, you know what I'm saying? There's this influx of street art and graffiti being like on the rise in Charlotte, but God City has been doing this work for well over a decade. Manoj, you know, you wrote.
I've written about them. Yeah.
One of the early reviews of one of their exhibitions, and this team of 4 Black men in the city were creating exhibitions, creating performances, music shows, concerts, like all encompassing culture in a space that didn't have it before. And they've been doing it since back in the day. And I think it really takes a moment for us to acknowledge that they had been doing it, right? Like this had been happening before it just became, I don't know, trendy or something that, you know, is seen everywhere now. And there could have been no Matt Moore had there not been a Marcus Kaiser, right? Like there could be no Alex DeLarge had there not been Antoine Williams. You know, it's like we have to continuously look back to those who have already laid this foundation for us so that we can get to where we are.
Yeah, so it's a great point. So for the audience, if you're not familiar with, first of all, Noel. So when I moved here in early 2000s, Noel Gallery was one of the 4 really wonderful galleries in Uptown, and unfortunately, all 4 of them are gone now. So they were in the Transamerica building. So on a first Friday night, that was the place to be, especially for the community of color. And, you know, she was featuring, like she was discovering and bringing in new artists from Africa, Latin America, like introducing to America, actually. It's not just showcasing, you know, local artists or national artists who are already established. So you're right, you know, Noel was, she was kind of the godmother of the scene at that time. About God City, Antoine might be with us. I don't know if Marcus is there because I saw Antoine had registered. So Antoine Williams, Marcus Kaiser, William Buckles, and John Hairston founded this group then. And they were, you know, they were the most exciting collective at that time. That was, you know, again, the mid 2000s. And all of them have gone on to, you know, become, I would say, nationally known now, really.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So back to the questions. All right, so this is a very different question. This is from Charles Thomas. Hey, Charles. You know, the community director of the Knight Foundation, who again has played a huge role in Boom, in everything we do. So his question is, what's it like working for the Haines Foundation? I assume you are aligned to your personal mission. Are you able to keep up with your art curatorial work?
Thanks for that question, Charles. The Haines Endowment and the Pittsburgh Foundation have 2 joint programs that I work with Celeste Smith and Shonda McDill on. One of them is called Advancing Black Arts in Pittsburgh, and the other is called Investing in Professional Artists. Both of these initiatives are incredibly aligned with my mission and vision, and Celeste and Shonda are just the most graceful and empathetic women in foundations that I've ever come across. The Advancing Black Arts in Pittsburgh initiative is specifically focused on creating opportunities for funding for Black arts in this landscape. The Investing in Professional Artists grant initiative is different, but unlike many other programs in the area, because it's specifically focused on providing funding for individual artists, which is something that, as you know, Manoj, and many other folks who are on this call who have difficulty funding their projects because they're not supported by a 501c3 or they're not a nonprofit themselves, having funding for specifically an individual for individual artists is incredible. And so I am very much so enjoying my time with this team and engaging with Celeste and Shonda. I've already learned so much from these women. Haines Endowment, Manoj, you know, Haines Ketchup, right? Like there is a shift that happens when you are always, you have previously been a grantee to see things from the grantor side.
Right.
And so, yeah, being able to, you know, money is not a problem is like a very interesting, shift to have made. And so I'm incredibly grateful for the team and for the work that we do. And yeah, there are a number of projects that we're working on right now that really align with my personal mission and vision of creating opportunities for Black people and Black artists. And so, yeah, I think, Charles.
Yeah. Have you read Decolonizing Wealth?
I haven't, but put it in a link, Manoj.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, and because it's by this actually a Lumbee native who's went on to do foundational work, and it's about how to try change that kind of the wealth distribution system from within. So I think you might find it very interesting, and it's a beautifully written book.
Thanks, Manoj. I'm gonna read.
Yeah, I need to find. I think its name is Edgar Villanova or something.
Okay.
The
On it, Lakeisha.
AAP, the Charlotte, the new generation of African American philanthropists. So Valeda, Fulwood, Charles, they're all part of that. So they had brought him to Charlotte last year. Oh yeah. Oh okay, yeah. So Charles is just yeah, highly recommend. Yes, Edgar
Villanova.
Decolonizing Wealth. Yeah.
See, this is a collaboration team. Thanks, y'all.
This is part of what Jessica and I do, recommend books to each other.
Sure.
So back to the questions. So this is from Lakeisha Leek.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm old, I need to remove my glasses to read. You're an amazing and strategic collaborator and go-getter. Do you have any tips for folks navigating the art world who might feel timid about how to make connections and create a path for themselves? It's a great question.
It is a great question. Also, Lakeisha.
A lot of especially, as an immigrant of color, it took me many years to have the confidence to even, I think all of us have that imposter syndrome a lot because, we've been so excluded for all the time. We don't see people like ourselves. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
No, not at all. Thank you for honing that down. Lakeisha's really lit, you guys. Somebody called me a Theaster girl the other day. And I kind of laughed about it, but Lakeisha is a Theaster girl with me. We used to work together for Theaster in Chicago. That's how we met.
Theasterite or something. There needs to be a more succinct term.
Theasterite? Wow. But independent of all that, that was the time of our past. Lakeisha runs a pretty successful foundation. she just started a scholarship that specifically is aiming to fund folks in Tampa. Y'all should follow the Eloise Foundation to get more information on the work that she's doing. She's real lit. Okay, this question.
Do you want me to repeat the question? Or?
No, I got it. But thank you. I think that it is always a risk. There's risk in everything we do. The worst that somebody can ever say to you is no. My dad told me before, and I'll never forget this advice. He said, never be afraid to quit a job. And he said it to me at such an early age that it just instilled this concept of fearlessness in me. I'm like, what am I gonna be afraid of?
Right.
You know, the worst that anybody could say is no. And I think just keeping this in mind, in being confident in what you're asking, always know what to ask. Be confident in what you're asking, have an intention set in place before you ask, and then just ask it. It sounds dramatic and incredibly frightening, I'm sure. But after you get turned down so many times, let me tell you about it.
Right.
After you get told no so many times, or continuously applying for grants or funding and being told no, or you know, like all of the no's that hit you, you start to just become like immune to no, and it just forces you to press on. And so, if I can provide any kind of advice to this young person, or not young person, just to this person who's navigating the art world, everybody is just doing their thing. And if you have something that you think can benefit the culture or move this needle forward, then just do it. Just do it. It's not even about wearing armor. It's not even about trying to protect yourself. I think it's really just being mindful of the reason why, like having a clear vision of why you're choosing to ask this thing and just move through it.
So this is kind of more of a personal question, and this is something I've been thinking of whenever I talk to you or whenever I think of your work. Actually, my deed. Okay. So this is a quote from Samuel Beckett about James Joyce, who was his mentor. And so bear with me, it's a somewhat long quote, but I think it's relevant. So Beckett is saying that Joyce was a superb manipulator of material, perhaps the greatest. The kind of work I do is one in which I am not a master of any material. The more Joyce knew, the more he could. He is tending towards omniscience as an artist. I am working with impotence, ignorance. I don't think impotence has been exploited in the past. I think anyone nowadays who pays slightest attention to his own experience finds it to be the experience of a non-knower, a non-canner, someone who cannot. So, I completely relate to it because, my main thing is impotence, and I'm not good at anything. So I kind of work with that. But, in your case, this is something I always thought, you seem to be, you're an artist, you're good at graphics, you're a great communicator, you're a very charismatic speaker. So you seem to have a very natural advantage or edge in doing this very multidisciplinary work, which involves a lot of people. So I'm not sure what the question is, but I guess the more of that, can every artist, even if they want to be that servant leader, be the kind of, be a Theaster Gates?
It's not about being Theaster Gates. Right. It's about being you and whoever you are, right? Like that is so key here. I remember being a gatekeeper when like people would call and be like, hey, we have this building that's been vacant for 50 years. Can superhero Theaster come out here and wave his magic wand and turn into this thing, and it's like in Memphis, Tennessee. And, sure how much are you willing? No, I'm just kidding. Right? The answer is no. No, Theaster doesn't know anything about Memphis, right? The idea that you are the Theaster. Theaster is just a dude, right? Like how all of us are just dudes. You have to be the person who, you know, this landscape.
Right.
You have connections there, right? Like you have the vision. You should feel empowered in yourself to do this work. Don't rely on anyone else. And I think that again taps back into this idea of servant leadership, right? It's really about this collaboration. It's really about this team and leaning onto others and like listening more than anything else. And there's no expectation that it is literally like magic, you know, like that's not how this works. It's about deep investment. And it's like you said earlier, Manoj, like this fancy word, social capital, right? It's really about the people and the relationships that are built there. And you, wherever you are, in your place of life, in your specific landscape, in the community that you live in, you are the only person who can do that work. And so the onus is on you specifically.
That's a good point. So, you know, it's interesting you mentioned, you know, brought up the word gatekeeper. I feel like what's happening now is that, you know, thanks to the internet revolution, the social media revolution, like, I don't think the traditional gatekeepers are all powerful anymore. So you don't need to be in New York or Chicago or London or Paris to matter as an artist. And I think that's also freeing up artists to work very hyper locally. So, you know, only Theaster could do the kind of work in that particular neighborhood, which a lot of Chicagoans are even afraid of driving through. So you know, I think that's the thing too. You know, it is about working with what you really know, the place you really know, where you can really create a change. All right, let me go back to some questions and comments. There's so much that I think I'm missing quite a few.
I think that I just really want to also just chime in with what you were just saying about local artists, Manoj. I think there was a comment earlier about something earlier, I don't know, it was a while ago, about the choice to honor or not honor these folks. Who can live in New York? Do y'all want to live in New York in a closet and pay $5,000?
Right.
You know, this is not, it is not feasible for artists to function in this way.
Right.
In addition to that, you also have to, I've lived this life, work 5 jobs, then what time do you have to focus on your craft? I think that we've seen in more recent years mass exodus from many of these places because of this, right? It is no longer affordable for us to think about making a living in spaces that aren't accessible to us, that. And so I think that there's often this language, and I know you've heard this, Manoj, where folks are like, yeah, but there's no art culture in Charlotte, right? Like there's nothing for us to do here. Again, I think the onus is on us as culture makers, as artists, as creatives, to not only develop this work, but also make it accessible for our community so that they're aware that it's happening, so that they can participate. It is always happening, right? There is always art. Everywhere we go, there's always art being made. I think it is incredibly problematic to act like in certain places that it's just these creative deserts when it's really not. That just really is so disrespectful to the people who are there, who are on the ground and doing that work.
Yeah, which is also kind of that colonial attitude where, there is no culture until they discover it and plant it there, because what exists there is not culture, not civilization. To recycle a very old joke that, what's the difference between Charlotte and a bowl of yogurt?
What is it? Yogurt
has a live culture. It's an old thing about LA actually, which is going back to. So by the way, one quick point: if Lakeisha is still with us, it'd be great if if she wants to share.
Ooh, putting you on the spot, Lakeisha.
Yeah, not share in the sense like, the links to, your organization, your work.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and by the way, Kia Moore has been doing a wonderful job. So everyone, I encourage you to go back to the chat, and there's so many wonderful links. So back to a question, Andrea's iPad. Andrea is asking, how should a Black African-American female enter the arts community to showcase her gifts?
Shoot me an email, Andrea. What you working on? Let's talk about it. What is it? Sonia Pfeiffer is on this call. She just came in the chat. Sonia is the director of Elder Gallery in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. Show up there.
Right.
Show up there. Bring a floppy or a floppy. Wow.
Come on, you're too young to say floppy.
Bring a
I just said that.
with your artwork on it, and show up there and let Sonia know what you're doing. There are so many people who are on this call that you just have to really go out and put yourself out there. And I know it feels weird, right? Like that question earlier, putting yourself out there, but show up. Matt just put in here the hug grant. Wow, that's so lit. That is a initiative that offers micro grants to artists in the local community. I mean, just put yourself out there. I don't know whether it's like social media, developing a website, wearing shirts that have your art in them. I don't like really whatever your tool is. Use your tool and be confident in it. Be really fearless in whatever it is that you want to say.
This is something I say to a lot of young artists, especially artists of color, that you might feel like you might not belong there, but the truth is that they need you more than you need them.
It's true. It's true. Also, shout out Sonia, because she's doing some really great work at the Elder. I think it's been less than 5 years, right, that you've been really leading this space. And in this time, I think last year they took an award by Charlotte, Best of Charlotte, for Best Gallery, which is really lit. Sonia is dope because she's got that art law practice going on. And also there's a number of social justice exhibitions that they've put on in this space. So Elder Gallery is really a great resource for our community, and I highly recommend y'all check it out if you're available.
So, Yay, Sonia, thanks for being here. Thanks for the work you do. Again, also a big supporter of Boom. She's on our Boom advisory board, along with Charles and a few of others who are here. So the question from Kia Moore. What is the role of art journalism in creating an arts ecosystem? Which are both really big terms, art journalism and art ecosystem, which I guess we can have big discussions just on those two terms. But what do you think?
I don't know if the labels serve us as much as we might like them to. You're making art, period, right? It's art. Right. It's just, you're using your creative skill set and your talents to create something. And whether that is journalism or literature or floral arrangements. I think that it is still art making. I do appreciate that question though. Let me try to make it better. What's the role?
What's the role of journalism or art journalism
in creating an art ecosystem? I think it's all relevant. Kia is here and she's doing these links, but Kia is one of the most modest people I've ever encountered in my life. Not only did she run a program called Hip Hop Orchestrator, which really was dope because it brought music in a language that students could understand into the classroom. And whenever I hype Kia up, I always talk about you know, the test that we used to take when we were little, when we were using floppy disks, that would say like, Carlos has 6 oranges and he drops 3. How many will, you know, and it was like, it just, there's no connection. It doesn't relate to you.
Right.
He had developed a system and a curriculum that would speak into a language that these students were already speaking, thus making it easier and more accessible to understand the information that they needed to learn. In addition to this, she was a major facet in the Charlotte arts ecosystem because specifically of her journalism practice.
Right.
Kia worked for Creative Loafing, now for QC Nerve, right? And so much a part of her criticism of the fine art scene and the arts and culture that exist in Charlotte would not be disseminated to the masses, would not be illuminated if it weren't for her taking the time to do this work. And so I think, Kia, you are an incredibly important part to this ecosystem. And without your writing practice, we would be remiss. Kia, also, it's worth mentioning, and this has not been announced yet, so I'm really excited to share this with you all publicly. The roll-up is continuing through COVID-19, although we've had to make some shifts. And Kia will be working with Ashley Nickens to be the incoming roll-up CLT resident and fellow. And I'm so excited that these 2 Black women are joining us as literary artists, as our incoming residents. And I'm so excited to see what they do and produce in this time. Roll-up residents and fellows are both compensated for their time with unrestricted honorariums. They're provided with a supply and material budget, transportation budget, meal and food stipend. And the idea for residents while they're in this space is specifically just to focus on the development of your craft. It's more like a sabbatical than it is a residency. So I'll hype Kia up all day.
Right, and yeah. And so, yeah, as Jessica was mentioning, Kia's written like some national award-winning cover stories about local artists, you know, for Creative Loafing. So she herself has personally contributed so much, plus been a huge part of the Boom team too. So thank you, Kia. So I know we are really running out of time. So I think I'm asked one more question, and Tim, I see you have some insightful comments on there. So hopefully we'll get to it, but you know, I don't want to keep anyone. I'm sure all of you have like a bar crawl to do. Okay, this is from Mikhail Frank. It's hard to be funny on Zoom. You know?
You're hilarious, Manoj.
You don't see the response from people, and you know, it's like everything is bombing. All right. So, Michael Frank, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. It's M-I-K-E-L, Frank. There seems to be a shift now from individual art making to collaborative art projects. Are there any collaborative art projects in Charlotte, other than Boom, that we should know about? Great question.
Yeah. Let's see, collaborative projects other than Boom. I mean, the roll-up's one.
Right.
If you haven't been to the roll-up, I hope you can come by.
You should hold up your necklace, by the way.
Oh my, yeah, I wish I might. The roll-up is in Camp Green, which is a historically and prominently Black community on the west side of Charlotte. And without the community, it would not be possible. So I really consider that a community collaborative work. Let's see, there's also the Sphere series that I'm a part of in collaboration with Hillary Burt, who's a professor at Queen's University, and Jen Edwards, who is curator at the Mint Museum, as well as Liz Faison, who's on the board of the Beckler. And the Sphere series is specifically focused on bringing artistic conversations with artists to community. So they're like free art history lectures. And it's a great program to be a part of. There are also a number of spaces that are collaborative DIY galleries and studios, like Goodyear Arts Black Market and Dup and Swat, which all like Camp Green. Excuse me, in Camp Northland.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And these are spaces that have tons of free programming that folks are always encouraged to participate in. And maybe going back to Andrea's question before about if you want to participate, if you want to show your work, if you want to be involved in this, it's honestly just about showing up. Come to the events, introduce yourself to people, have a drink. Maybe that kind of loosens it up a little bit so you feel a little more confident. I don't know how old you are. To engage in this, but yeah, I think there are everything is collaborative, right? I don't know, Manoj, don't you think so? Isn't everything collaborative?
Yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, even like we are all doing projects which are really intentionally collaborative, but I mean, I don't believe in the idea of a lone genius. There's nothing like that. I mean, every breakdown comes from the community.
Let's break down these hierarchical structures, right? It's like, can we have more linear ways of thinking about and doing things? That's why I think everything is collaborative. So, yeah.
By the way, a very interesting comment from Tim Miner. I think it's related, but kind of a general observation. This is a good time to reach out to people. We are craving contact, and scheduling a call or on Zoom is so easy. People are being very free and generous with their time, as we can see from all of you wonderful people gathered here. While we are set apart physically, we are closer than ever digitally. It's a great observation. And I think there are so many new opportunities that we never thought of that will happen because of this, because of the new situation we are in. So let me see, again, I need to wrap up.
I'm also about that letter writing life,
right?
Because so much. I'm zoomed out. My friend Manoj. No, I'm just kidding. I'm on a Zoom call every day for like 4 hours. I'm like, oh, I have to pee because I'm on the computer so much. I like forget to use the bathroom. That I really wonder if this is also a time to go back to some like real age, what did I say? Maybe floppy disk was real, right? Like go back to ancient ways of communicating with each other, because
even without language, like
like those
grunts and
I don't know. It's just this is overwhelming, right? And it feels like it needs my undivided attention all the time to like look into this little thing on my computer and like be present with you. And I'm grateful. Again, I acknowledge the privilege that I have to be able to use this device and to communicate with my community. That is very valid, and I think it's worth sharing. However, I wonder if there are other ways for us to consider communicating with each other. Miracle, what do you think?
I'm sorry? Sorry.
Yeah, carrier pigeons, smoke signals. I think thank you, Brianna.
Yeah, Brianna.
Brianna Daniels / Cosmosis Stones is here in this chat, and she made this beautiful piece of jewelry that I'm wearing. You all should definitely check out at Cosmosis Stones on Instagram. So that, wow, that was good timing, Beth. Beth and I planned this so that you can support this artist. How I am choosing to support artists this time. Can I ask my own question? How are you supporting?
Yeah, right. And we can wrap up with that.
Jessica, yes, Jessica. How are you supporting artists during COVID-19? Right, when like you can't go out to the gallery in a way that we've been accustomed to before, or you can't just show up at events that people are hosting. I have chosen to use this time of COVID-19 to support one artist every month by adding a piece to my permanent collection. My art collection is not fancy, but it's mine. And I encourage everyone who has the means to begin to develop their own collection. I support Black contemporary artists. I have a lot of photography in my collection. It's mostly two-dimensional works, but every month I am hitting up a colleague or a friend or a homie or someone whose work or who I, not even the work, but the person who I believe in, who I want to invest in. And I'm purchasing a work of theirs, one a month. And so we've been in here since March, and I've got 3 pieces that I wouldn't have had before, that I now have because of this pandemic. The most recent work that I bought was just by Antoine Williams. It was a drawing of his. That was $125. And again, if you have the means to do so, I heavily encourage you to support the folks who are really suffering because of loss of income, because of canceled events, because of exhibitions that are no longer being had, right? Like again, I love how Lakeisha put it earlier, the only way that we can sustain ourselves is by creating the culture in which we see. And so, yeah, if you have the means to do so, support your homies.
Right.
Buy their art.
By the way,
to stones.
I don't know if Antoine is still with us, but dude, you need to, charge more for your paintings.
Well, it's not a painting; it's a drawing, and it's 8 by 10. And Manoj.
From you.
It was a steal. But I mean, that goes to,
So yeah, I mean,
it's less even to what we were saying before,
right.
Less about the object,
right?
Like that's a thing I'm really excited to have and hanging on my wall and do all of that. But it's more about the investment in the person. I see you, Antoine. Right. I appreciate the work. I want to acknowledge what you have done. And so if I can contribute $100 and whatever to it in the smallest way, if this is what I can do, then please take this money.
Right. But there is that element of, I mean, this is just such brilliant work. I mean, Marcus, Antoine, and all that. So, and, it's kind of, it's too bad that, I mean, they couldn't, sell more at higher price and all that. So anyway, by the way, just to mention that you can see some of Jessica's, that wonderful collection at Rolla, right? Mm-hmm. So next time you visit.
Sonia had a show of Antoine.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Sonia, thanks for mentioning that. That's right. And and plus Antoine was a recent resident at the my call center. So.
And I don't know if Emily is still on this call from Elsewhere Museum, which is in Greensboro. Andrea, that's also.
Oh, was Emily on the call?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Andrea, I don't know if you're still around, but that's somebody else you should reach out to. Emily she's the creative director at Elsewhere Museum, and she had, hey, what's up, Queen? She's got in one of the spaces in Elsewhere, a permanent site-specific installation of Antoine's that is
right.
really, really dope. So.
And if any of us have not been to Elsewhere, that's by far the coolest art space, I think, in all of North Carolina or beyond. So, just to be respectful of everyone's time, any quick closing remarks, Jessica?
I love all of you in unique ways. And I'm so happy to see all of your not faces, but your names in white ink on your black squares. And to just know that you're here in this space. This feels like a real community, and I'm really grateful to be here with you all. Thank you for listening to me ramble. Thanks, Manoj, for having me. Thanks, Cameron, here together.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we could, sorry we had to kind of talk, but we could talk all night. But so yeah, thank you all of you again. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jessica, and good luck to everything that you do. I mean, thank you for doing everything you do, first of all. So,
thank you. Love you all.
Yeah. So just kind of a closing remark, thanks again to Jessica, to Carmen. By the way, Sonia Pfeiffer's reminding that her show is still up at Elder Gallery, although I don't know if you can go in there. You might want to check. So yeah, you can see the information about the artists of Jessica. So check out their websites. Check out boomcharlotte.org. Contribute if you can. As I said earlier, all this is just way outside of what we were originally planning to do, and we are operating just by the grace of all the wonderful artists and team members who still want to contribute. So any contribution would make a big difference. So hope to see all of you. We'll be announcing next month very soon. It'll be the weekend, the kind of the middle of the month. So thanks again, and I guess we are over and out.
Can we play one more autumn song on our way?
Yeah, definitely. We can play this on the way out. Perfect. Great idea.
She's really lit. You guys dance your way out.
I'm just taking my time, but I'll never relax. No looking back, click, clack, pow. Kill off the past, hate that. It took a storm to make the flowers grow. Rolling up, fuck somebody coming to match. My mind in the labs, hot unattached. Don't give it back, I just wear it on my sleeve so the scars will show. I used to pride myself, I never hide myself. I could just ride for myself and used to